Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode.
Today, we are talking about income streams in your creative business and how to determine which ones are best for you. We're going to take you through some questions to figure out what is best for you and your business. We are back.
Hello.
I never know how to start the podcast. We are back. Hello. I don't know.
It is kind of awkward.
It is awkward.
A little bit.
Beginning each episode, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're excited that you're listening.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, we are here today as many creative businesses are moving forward after. I don't want to say after the pandemic because it certainly is not over.
True.
As the pandemic, we'll say, has made you look at your business differently.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic has made us look at everything differently, right? From professional to personal. And
Exactly.
So today we're just going to dive into a little bit more of the professional side of things.
Yes. So we'll be talking about some ideas for you on how do you determine like what brings income into your business, because there's tons of options, frankly.
I think what spurred this for us too is, again, right at the beginning of pandemic, like our business kind of stopped and we were kind of like,
we need to think.
Like we need
things.
to rethink a little bit about what this looks like. And it's really, it just had created a lot of good questions that we're going to walk you through and talk about a little bit.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
And we are going to use examples and like income streams for a creative business.
Yeah.
However, if you're not a creative business and you have a different kind of business, we recommend you keep listening because we're going to go through some questions that will be helpful to you no matter what kind of business that you run, of how do you figure out what types of income streams you can have. Because while we both have a knowledge base in creative, we've done everything from graphic design to photography, obviously what we do now, which is having both teaching and courses and also selling products.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll tap into all the different things. These questions that we go through will help you determine, no matter what kind of business you run, like, okay, what are our income streams and that type of thing. And we're going to talk about a little bit about like diversification. That sounds very like financial. It is financial, but it's the idea of not having all of your eggs in one basket, but also not spreading yourself so thin that you don't have even a single egg in a basket.
I think that's really key. That's really key. I think thinking about these different options and creating these different outlets, but also if you spread yourself too thin, you especially if you're like a small business, you can't do it all, and like you will burn out so fast and you won't really have impact in one or two places because you're trying to feed a ton of different spaces.
And you confuse your audience too.
Yeah.
You can. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. So if you're thinking like, what do you mean by income streams? Let's give some exact examples. And again, we're going to talk in creative business terms here, but put in your business type of thing here.
Yeah.
So obviously with a creative business, you could have, if you're creating any kind of pieces or that kind of thing, you have products you can sell. Obviously within products, you can have such a variety of things that you can sell within that. It can be everything from notebooks to art prints to t-shirts to mugs. I mean, the list could go on forever.
You could just say whatever comes out of your mouth, and that's kind of a product.
Exactly. Exactly. So all of there's lots of different things you could do with that. Original pieces. You could sell, I'll use an example. Like you've created original pieces of artwork where you've sold the original painting, but then maybe we've made a print, or it's a custom piece where someone has hired you to do something
very specific.
And then we're not selling that to anyone else. That is just for them. So it's a variety of original pieces and that kind of thing.
Sometimes we've done custom pieces that then the person that ordered that is like, yeah, I'm happy for you to resell that or whatever. So it just depends. But I think those are things that you have to make clear to your clients, especially if you're doing custom pieces.
Exactly. Then there is something that is a word that you'll hear no matter what industry you're in, called passive income. And I love this, but also I think when
It's
people say passive income, you
yeah.
think, oh, great, I don't have to do any work, which that's not true either.
Yeah.
So the idea of passive income is it's something that you set up, and so then it makes money. The idea is most people say, well, you sleep, you make money kind of thing.
Hmm.
Obviously, you have to set it up. You have to be marketing it. Like all those things are still happening, but the idea is that it's kind of a evergreen is another word that
Well,
people
you just
use.
don't. You're not having to. You once you set it up, you're not necessarily having to do much more on the creation side
Of it,
or
yes.
all that kind of stuff. It's already ready to go. So once somebody purchases it, it's done. Like you don't have to do much more to that. If that
Exactly.
makes any sense.
Exactly.
But you still there's other things on the back end of it that you still have to take care of with it.
Yes.
But in
There's still
theory,
work in it.
it's making money while you don't
Yes.
really have to do
And
anything.
these could be like something like a course or something that's set up that you don't, I mean, you maybe do lives in it or something like that, but
Yeah, or
there's
like another thing I was thinking of is like a font. If I created a custom
exactly.
font and I put it up there and people can purchase it and
They
great,
download it.
download it, it's done. Like
Exactly.
I don't have to do anything more on my end once it's created and it's set up to download basically.
These
So
could be things like I'm completely blanking on the name of it. What is Skillshare, Creative Market, like some of those things either
yeah,
you are sharing your knowledge or you are sharing like mock-ups, fonts, whatever it may
yeah,
be, some of those kind of things, or you can do it on your own website,
yeah.
anything like that.
Hmm.
Another form of passive income can be licensing. Now, there's a lot of work in the upfront of that, but then it's handed off. And,
Yeah,
for instance, we have some of our cards licensed in the United States. And so like once they get the artwork and we are constantly sending them artwork of every quarter we send them ideas and hey, would you like to pick up any of these designs? And then if they do, then that we have no I mean we can tell people hey look for our cards in these places, but other than that,
hmm,
it's literally we just every so many times a year a check arrives
hmm,
for the amount of commissions that has happened. So there is
yeah,
again it's passive because like we have no involvement on it after a certain point,
yeah,
except for we can point people that direction. But
yeah. That's true.
so having some passive income streams is really good for creative businesses if you can get them set up.
Definitely.
And then there's also teaching, coaching.
Yeah, that's kind of self-explanatory.
That's kind of self-explanatory.
Sharing your expertise and what you do.
Exactly. And I think what you just said, though, sharing your expertise. Remember, I think often a lot of us, and we're guilty of this too, think, well, we don't have much to offer because we're not like at this certain status yet, whatever that might be in a business.
Yeah.
Frankly, we're comparing ourselves to other people when we say that. But you're always one step ahead of somebody else
Yep.
that you can help them in whatever your specialty may be.
Exactly.
And when it comes to coaching and teaching, it is all over the board about what people need and what
Oh
you
my
can
gosh.
teach.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
is way all over the board. So don't tell yourself that you can't do it. You can.
Yep.
Wholesale.
Wholesale.
That
another-
is, we have done some of this
Kind
for
of dipped
sure.
our toes into this a little bit.
And this is very much a like choice you would want to make. Wholesale basically means you are selling your products in more of a bulk. It could be anywhere. I mean, ours have ranged from like 5 cards to 100 cards, but you're selling them to usually a physical store, sometimes an online store too, though.
Yeah.
And then they are reselling it for their retail price.
Right.
So usually when you do wholesale, you are also giving the retailer a discount on what your normal price would be. So there's a lot
Right.
involved
so
with
they
that.
can make money.
Exactly. They need to be able to make money, but you also need to make money.
Yeah.
So that's like super important in thinking through wholesale. This can be like some creative businesses obviously have been picked up like big places like Anthropology and stuff like that. And you can see that in the store. You're purchasing artwork from an artist. Anthropology hasn't created that design.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so they will often buy things wholesale from artists and stuff like that. So that's a practical example right there. Obviously, much smaller stores and stuff like that exist too that do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Markets,
Yeah.
whenever we're back
Yeah.
to a place where we can do those.
Yeah, whenever that's
Markets / what do we call? Why have I forgot what they're called in the States? Like art.
like shows. Or yeah, what are they?
I don't know why I've completely forgotten like the more American term for it. Any type of thing. I mean, it could be
like
anything,
an event, like that you
event.
have a booth at.
Festivals. Like
Yeah.
we call them in the States. Sometimes you call it a booth that you have, and here in the UK they say a stall. Basically, you have your artwork displayed and you're selling it,
or your business
or
displayed,
your
whatever it
business
is.
displayed,
Yeah,
and you're able to sell on the spot right there. People are in and out, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Obviously, this past year, a lot of markets though did switch and did online stuff, so you can
yeah, that's true.
participate in
They did
those
like online ones. Yeah,
online. But usually there is with those, there's usually a fee to like be part of the market,
yep,
and then obviously then you make the money and stuff like that from it. We already said licensing.
yeah. We already talked about licensing a little bit,
We already touched on that a little bit,
and then
and
freelance.
and then there's freelance design, which you've done. You've done
Yeah,
quite a
we've
bit of
done
that.
quite a bit of that. I mean, that's basically,
That's how we started.
yeah, that's true. Like that's how the business kind of built itself up, is just, somebody contacts you and says, "Hey, can you do this for me?" And then you create it and you pass it off to them, kind of thing. It's more of that's more on the design side of it, of the art side of our business, like more of the, for me, because I went to school for design and visual communications, like, branding and things like that, that I'm capable of doing for people and companies and small businesses and stuff. We get hired for that sometimes as well. So
Yeah. And another thing too is royalties. And this, we're just starting to dabble in some of this stuff. So we're not vastly, there's many people I could point you to that we're learning from right now in this process, but that comes from anything, like your artwork is put into a book. Or you're doing, like, you're actually doing the designs to go along with a book and stuff like that. And there's multiple ways royalties can, and you could actually write a book
set
yourself,
up, yeah,
actually,
you
too.
can set up the
So
roles
it
in
can be set up
different
that
ways.
it's paid up front and that's all you ever get. It could be that you get a small portion up front, that's an advance of your royalties, and then you get that paid as the book sells, or then you wait and get all the royalty. There's all these different ways that it works, but that is another way too. And that's, again, a lot of work done up front, but then it's income that comes in. Obviously, you would want to promote the book and things like that too. But
Right. Definitely.
so that's another income thing too for a creative business. That is
Mm-hmm.
an option. So I know we've just gone through that, but I think it's important to understand like different options.
And there's
We've
probably
for sure
some,
left stuff out.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No,
There's
it's not
some
probably.
that
We
we
definitely
haven't.
left stuff out, but those are just some ones we've had some experience with. The thing is, though, before you look at that list and are like, oh, like I think I want to do that, and that, you've got to ask yourself some questions because they all involve different levels of commitment, different levels of like space. I mean, all these kinds of
Space,
things.
time,
And you've got to ask yourself, like, how do you want to run your business?
Yeah, I mean,
right. I mean, we found that.
huge. I mean, again, because of, again, the last year and a half, it's how do we want our business to function moving forward? And that's what's brought up this question for us in so many ways. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And you have to, the first thing you need to do is look at your season of life that you are currently in. So this could be that you are in a season of life where you're just transitioning from a full-time job to this being, or, when I say full-time job, like you're working for somebody and maybe you are in the process of transitioning to your creative business being your full-time job. Like that's a season you're in.
Yeah.
It could be you've got very young kids. We were there. That's a season. Work looks very different that season.
We're kind of slightly still in that a little bit.
We're in that, but our kids are older now. I mean, our youngest is going to be 7 soon. And with that, that means like things look different for us than they did when everybody was very young, or we still had somebody at home that wasn't in any kind of preschool or nursery or anything.
Yeah.
And so that's a season.
Definitely.
So you have to be real in what season you're in. It's really hard when you're in some of those seasons that are like, oh gosh, my time really is limited. It's really hard to wish that season away. Don't do that. Like, enjoy that season you're in, but be realistic of what it means for your creative business. Otherwise, you're going to put undue pressure on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely with that season, you really have to kind of take an inventory of what's going on and, look at how much time you have for certain things. Look at again, like going back to the previous podcast, like looking at your time and priorities. You really have to kind of take an assessment of all that stuff, to really understand, okay, this is what I'm capable of. And then almost kind of start to open up the door of, okay, what income streams can fit into this system or this time and space and opportunity at the moment. So
yeah, knowing and understanding that time and what, I mean, sounds so cliche to say anyways, but what do you, in the season of life that you're in right now, what do you want your life to look like? because that does determine, I mean, it's hard to say, I know, because as creative business owners and as business owners, we want to be like, I can do it all. I want to try it all. I want to do all these things. But like, it's just not realistic to dive into everything all at once. So really think about the season of life that you are in. So take time to, think about that, what that means for your time and stuff like that.
So what does your time
so
look
that's
like?
the first question.
That first question is, what does my time look like? What does your time look like right now in this season? What does it look like?
Yes, because again, like we said, I think I work with examples. So let's give some examples. For us, when I had my creative photography business, I mean, it was a photography business. Our kids were very young and nobody was in any type of schooling at first when we started it. So we had to really look at and Pat was running a freelance graphic design business at that time too. So we both had businesses. And that meant we had to really look at the time and say, like, when am I available to actually do photo shoots? Because, these certain things come into play, and Pat may need to be more available during the daytime hours to talk with clients, things like that. So it made us really look at like, okay, like, and then, I mean, when it comes to photography, depending what kind you're doing, for me, I was doing outdoor on location photography.
What's the weather like
then
today?
the weather is in play, but obviously what kind of light is there? Like being out at noon and photographing for the type of photography I was doing, which was more natural light photography, that was not ideal. So that meant evenings, mornings, what that looks like, that kind of thing. So you have to figure out like timing of things. And this is, again, I am one to say, oh, I can fit that all in. So you have to be realistic. Something that I would highly recommend doing, that Pat's like smiling at me because he's probably like, oh gosh, but it really has helped me, is to understand, like, actually how much time do I have to work and what am I spending my time doing? And there are free things that you can use. The one I use is called Toggle. And just do it for a week or two. I'm not saying you have to do this all the time. I do it all the time because we would like to hire a couple people to help us do things, and I want to understand how much time they would be doing that for.
Yeah.
But just find out how you're spending your time. And it sounds silly to do that, but like track during your day or whenever you would normally work and that kind of thing. Or even put on there like when you have to go pick up kids from something, or if you're spending time with your kids and that, because you see then, oh, this is actually the number of hours I have to work.
Yeah, you realistically have.
Exactly. You have to be realistic in it. You can't think, oh, well, I'm going to stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning every week for the next 6 weeks and work. Like, your body's going to shut down at some point doing that. Yes, there are times that might feel more like
it's more about thinking about what is sustainable.
Exactly. It's about
because this is a journey. It's not a sprint right now, like in this. And so what is going to get you to that place that you want, and you take one step at a time. You can't assume that, okay, in the next 3 days I'm going to do all this stuff and then it's all going to work. You've got to take very orchestrated steps to get to that point that you're desiring, but you can't burn yourself out just because. You just have to be realistic in your time.
It's some things you learn because you do it, and then you go, what have I gotten myself into? So an example I can think of is Pat had painted on. Had painted. Are you laughing because you're already thinking about it?
I already know.
It was it was probably late October, and he came up with this idea. This is years and years ago. It helped launch our business actually, into what more stuff we do now. But he came up with the idea that he was going to paint an old vinyl record and then like paint lyrics on hand paint.
Yeah, I did like 4 of them just for fun.
Lyrics on them. Yeah, like his own like fonts he had come up with and hand paint them and everything. So he did a few. It got picked up by a really famous blog, and then we were inundated with and they were, every single one was a custom order because it was like somebody's.
In like a couple hours, I think I had 80 orders.
Yes. And what we had not accounted for, well, first of all, it was during the Christmas season of it being like right as November hit. So everyone wanted them for Christmas, of course, that they were all custom. So when there's custom things, you have a lot of going back and forth with the client, making sure colors are right, the lyrics, the look, all that stuff. And then when you're hand painting custom lyrics, like, and you were very detailed in that, it takes time. Yeah.
Well, and they weren't just a font. Like,
no, you were coming
like I had like illustrated elements in there and like all that kind of stuff. So it was, and again, I had to create a sketch for the client and they had to approve it first. So it's like I was in some ways doing it twice
True.
in a
Yes.
lot of ways, because I really wanted to make sure we were getting exactly what the client
And when
wanted,
we
and it just it was
Well, and when we
ridiculous.
did it too, these are things that charging the right thing is a whole nother conversation to have. But when we did it, we were like, oh, yeah, this seems like a good price. That seems like it took you this much time. That seems like a good price. But then when we got that
So,
many and realized how much time it was taking, we're like, oh my gosh, and even one of our friends was
we're
like, you are
making
charging way
nothing.
too little for this because have you actually figured out how much time you're spending on them? And
And then like how much did it
out.
cost to package it and send it
Yes.
out? Like we ended up like making no money on that. It was
Until we upped the prices
Yeah.
on them to be realistic. So you do you learn sometimes you make mistakes like that. And I mean, you were up a nonstop during that time.
But again, it wasn't. It was there was no plan in it.
No, we
And
hadn't
so
thought
I
about
think
any of this ahead of time.
that was a huge mistake on my part, because it was something that I created something fun, and I was like, oh, this maybe could potentially be part of the business, not thinking that if I put it out there and people really liked it, I was gonna have to do it,
Yes.
and not thinking of like realistically with some of the clients and things like that. I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll get it to you. Oh yeah, and I wasn't realistic in my time with it.
So
And
if you are creating something like that, I would highly recommend before you put it out into the world,
just know how much time you
exactly
put into
track
it.
your time. How many hours does it just take me to create that? And like even and we'll get into some more things of this, of like when you decide the products you're offering and how you offer them too, like know how much time that takes you, because sometimes it's the stuff that, and this is where I think creative business owners get tripped up. I feel like I didn't think of my owning a business would be like this, because you're like, all I do is package orders,
Yeah.
or all I do is for photography, a ton of my time was going back and forth with clients and things like that, or like ordering the photos and that kind of stuff. And so, again, tracking your time and knowing that is super important. Sometimes you learn it after, unfortunately, like we did in that situation.
Right.
But if you can really think about it ahead of time and understand, you may only have 20 hours in the week to work, to actually do work.
Yeah.
And so, what does that mean? How do you use that
So
time?
if it's a certain custom product and you know that each one of those takes 3 hours or 4 hours, you can do 5 of those a week.
And then is that the right product to offer? Because how
right.
much income is that going to bring you then?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's where the two questions come to play.
Just
of like,
to understand your time.
exactly.
And being realistic about it.
So then with that, then it's what do you do with that time? So
Right.
understanding your
Right.
time
Which
and
is
how
what
much time you
you were
have,
just
and then
saying.
what do you do?
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question to what do you do is, what is your like zone of genius? What are you uniquely able to do that makes your business
And what gives you
thrive
life.
and unique? Exactly.
And what gives you life in that time.
And let's be real clear here. When you start a business, you're not, there are some people might be able, if they have investors and stuff like that, might be able to like hire somebody right away or those kind of things. But when you first start your business, it's you. Maybe you have a teammate or something like that, but it's you doing all of the things.
All the things.
So that means, you have to figure it's the finances, it's the emails, it's this, it's that, it's all the stuff that when you get into business, you're like, oh, I don't like this part. And it's you doing it at front. So you've got to really honor your time and stuff like that and really think through that.
Well,
But
that's part of the time now.
Exactly. But really think through like, what is the things that I uniquely do that as I grow my business that I need to be doing versus like I could have someone else do that. And it doesn't mean that that's a lesser thing. It just means like that's not your unique gifting. So, for me, currently, like we're looking at having someone like when we have new products and things like that, or SEO and that kind of stuff, of like spending the time to get it up on the website and getting all the SEO right and that kind of thing. It's important for me to understand it. And so I have done the bits of understanding it and stuff like that, but that does not take my uniqueness in things, if that makes any sense. Like where more of like me writing the actual, our content and things like that for social media, for the podcast, or different things like that. That is really important, and that brings our unique voice into where I wouldn't hire somebody else to do that,
Right.
or for other people to speak on the podcast
Right.
and tell them, that kind of thing. But so that's thinking through that of like what's your, and you would feel the same way, like for Pat, like it's obviously creating.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think obviously we could find other artists and things like that could create within our brand and look and all that kind of stuff. But yet, for me, that I would really struggle with that, to have another artist come on and do the work that we do and create the brand that we are, because that's unique to me. It's not necessarily unique to them. So, for me, I want to make sure that I'm doing the majority of the creating and everything that we're doing, because that's what people are hiring
But
us
there are
for.
plenty of
So,
businesses out there that have multiple artists
yeah,
that work for their
right.
business,
But
and
that
that's
turns
again
into something
that turns into some, like, that's where you
slightly
want
different.
to think, like, where do I want to go in the future? Where do I want to take this in the future? And like, because then you're working towards that. And
Mm-hmm.
so as you're thinking through these income streams, it's like, well, what do I want my life to look like? All of those kinds
Mm-hmm.
of things are so important, just like we talked about in the priority stuff
Yeah.
podcast. Because that informs, like, well, this is important to me, or this is not important to me, or I need to look at these income streams.
Mm-hmm.
The other question is, like, this sounds like a silly one to ask, but like, what does your
Yeah,
physical space
definitely.
look like? Because that has determined,
Mm-hmm.
Pat has been, had abilities in our previous place when we lived in the States to like paint large painting commissions, like big paintings.
Yeah. For like restaurants and things. Yeah.
Exactly. And we had space in the house, we had space in a garage. There was multiple options. We don't really have that option here in
Yeah.
London
That would be,
currently.
I mean, we could figure a way out to do it,
We'd all have
but
paint all over us
but
walking
you
by.
would our dinner table would we'd have to eat on top of a painting basically. We just have
Exactly.
no space for that. So
Yes. So really thinking about that, that's a simple one. Like, even the products you offer and stuff, like, and how you offer those products, is something for us. We have made a switch where we do print on demand now, where for instance, an example would be, we haven't ordered 1,000 mugs to keep in our house to mail out
yeah,
ourselves.
we just can't
We
keep
can't keep them
inventory.
anywhere. We can't keep inventory like that. And so that means, like, we had to look for a print on demand option. We made that choice for multiple reasons, like
Mm-hmm.
sustainability, things like that. But that is an example of, like, we don't have the space to keep the stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to be realistic in that, and that will determine the kind of income streams you can do, because you may not be able to store 1,000 mugs or 1,000 t-shirts or things like that.
Yep.
I don't know why I keep picking 1,000, but that's just an example.
Well, it's just I mean we couldn't keep prints and like all that kind of stuff right now. Like we realistically don't have space to have very much inventory of anything,
Exactly.
whether that's a t-shirt or a print or
Or
cards or
a bunch of
whatever.
cards, yeah.
We just don't have the space. So we had to really assess, like, how can we make this work for us right now and still create the content and the products that we want, but and that just led us to print on demand stuff.
Yeah.
So
And another question then too of, like, your income streams is, like, what waste are you okay with? So that goes into some of the things that you really, care about and things like that. I'm so sorry. There is a truck in the background. Hopefully you can't hear it. But real life here, honking horns and stuff like that. But what waste are you okay with? So we made a decision, like, we had some experience in the States where we had ordered some products in bulk ahead of time. Again, we had the space at that time to store it and stuff like that. And we had an incident, for instance, with offering clothing. And this was just not our knowledge base at the time and things like that.
We really struggled in knowing what sizes to
So we
order
ended
and
up
all
with
that
a
kind of
lot
stuff.
of one size left, and it felt like we just couldn't sell that size. We just tried, and it just wasn't a size that many people needed.
Yep.
We didn't know that ahead of time. There's certainly ways you can figure that out, but we ended up with a lot of stuff that we ended up, like, donating in the end. And so, that's something to think through. Am I okay if I order this many cards and then, like, I literally have 100 left? Am I okay with what that creates in waste? Or mugs? We had an incident where we had a bunch of mugs printed and the printer messed them up horribly, and then the printer just told us to keep them. We couldn't sell them. We had
Yeah.
100 mugs.
It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. Like, I mean, they were not sellable. We didn't want to even donate them. It was like,
Yeah.
what do we do with all these mugs? So you really do need to think through that, like, a product wise and stuff. There's even things, what's the right phrase here? Electronic wise. What are the things right now we've been
The
talking
big NFT
the
stuff.
NFT
Oh
stuff.
my gosh.
We're
You're
not going to go
there?
into it, but there is energy used in those. And if you start Googling that and stuff,
I mean, from what I've heard, there's still new solutions as
okay.
well. So
Well, that might be changing.
I think that is still working it. That whole side of the industry is working itself
Yeah.
out.
So with
it'd be interesting to
but
see
we
what
follow
happens.
an artist that is really well known that he was really going to offer this
Yeah, he was all
NFT
about
thing,
it,
and
and
then he
then
shut it down because he was like, I did not realize how much energy this uses to create
yeah,
these
currently, yeah,
and that could change in a week, I'm sure.
yeah,
But I mean, that's just something, again, it informs your decision. So he chose at that time not to have that be an income stream for him.
right,
So that will, and all of us are at different levels of comfortableness with the
yeah.
waste thing too. So that's to be, there's no judgment there. That's just to be.
Oh yeah,
part of
again,
that.
it's just that question. What are you okay with? How are you okay? Are you creating pieces that with materials that are,
True. How do you
all
get
that
rid of
kind of
those
stuff.
materials if you
Yeah,
don't
I
use
mean, there's
them?
just
And yeah.
that question is good. It's more of like, yeah, how do you want to, what kind of waste are you creating?
Yeah. And then we kind of touched on this earlier, but it's just a question that is kind of, I guess it's the final question, but what kind of life do you want to live? And so this is a big question to ask when you're thinking about income streams of like, why would I ask that question? But so let us kind of share why we're asking that question, because this has determined a lot of our decisions also in the past couple of years too.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, for us, we, and this is even future forward thinking for us too. And so we're making decisions in our business right now that like aren't reality, but we are praying and hoping that they become reality. And
Yep.
so for us, as you know, like we are from the States and we live in the UK, and we experienced a couple years ago when we went back to the States, we literally had to shut our business down because we were
Well,
printing.
we were in a limbo space of
We
not really
were.
sure if we were staying in the States or if
Exactly,
we were
well, there was
moving
that.
back. And so we had to shut things down because we couldn't actually create the products that we had online because we were doing it at home.
Yeah, we were printing
And we
everything at
didn't
home.
have a home at the moment.
Exactly. Well, we didn't, it wasn't even that. Like, even we realized that experience made us realize, like, let's say we go back to the United States to visit our family and friends. And we go, I mean, if we're going back there, we're going to go for a significant part of time because it's expensive and everything. So we will go back for 3 weeks. And shutting down a product-based business for 3 weeks, if that's your only income stream, depending on the time of year, sure, but like that can be detrimental. We saw it in some different areas of just even like website stuff and just different things like that. We couldn't actually get anybody anything. And so it's not to say you can't ever, go
Shut
on
your
holiday
shop
or
down,
shut
yeah.
your shop down, stuff like that. But it is practical things that you need to think through of like, what does it look like? If I go on holiday, who does these things? Sometimes before it was like if we were going on a vacation or something, we just said your products will ship in the next week because we're gone. 3 weeks to a month, those start to
That's
change
pushing it
things a little bit. Especially if you were to ever travel in like the holiday season or something comes up during that time. So that made us switch to print on demand. We do still have a print. I'm looking at it right now. We have a printer and we still do some of that stuff, but like that made us change. And when I say print on demand, it means we have another company. It's not coming from us that does that.
That has,
so
like, different hubs
no matter
all over
where
the
in the
world.
world we are, it's all
Yeah.
connected through our shop and stuff like that. Someone orders, it goes through to them and they can print it and mail it and ship it. That is not the right decision for everybody, but for us, because of how we want our life to look and how we know that will be a reality as traveling like that internationally and stuff
Yeah.
like that, to see family and that kind of thing, but that's part of it for us.
Yeah, we just didn't want to have to feel like shutting down our business. Because again, our hope is that some of that traveling and stuff is multiple times a year.
We would hope eventually, yeah.
And so if we're thinking future wise, if that's going to be multiple times a year, that's not going to be sustainable for our business and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And for us too, like we would love to have a team working for us. I can't wait till we have that. But we really thought through even that process of thinking we want our business to look like as we decided like, well, we'd love to like have fun like team retreats and stuff like that maybe during the year. We want to actually be able to give people the flexibility to work from home and that kind of stuff. We had this thought before COVID actually. So
Yeah.
it has flowed well into things.
Yeah, definitely.
That we want that flexibility. So we want a virtual remote team. So our space and where we choose to live or to have an office and stuff like that, that's not a high priority for us. Now, that could look completely different for you. And so that also determines income streams. Like there's a great place that makes like notebooks and cards and stuff like that here in London. And they have a really cool office space. And I love seeing how their team works together and they're like packaging orders and they're working together and all stuff like that. And I love that, but I also have realized like that's not for us. Like that's
Right.
not what we've chosen,
Right.
because that's not
It's
currently
really easy, I think, to look at some of those things and go, "Ooh, that's what I want." But
oh,
then you
exactly. Their
again,
shop looks so cool, and I'm like, oh,
that's
that looks
kind
so.
of a whole separate conversation. But just the idea of like looking at other people and going, "Ooh, I want that," but is that actually the right fit for you?
It's the whole
So,
staying on your path thing,
Yeah,
which we
yeah.
talked about in
Yeah.
another episode. It's
Yeah.
all about that. And that comes so much when it comes to your income streams of like selecting those things
Mm-hmm.
of like, what do you want your life to look like? And like certain people, we're all good. And that's what's so cool about it is that's why there's so many businesses started. That's why there's so many different kind of creative businesses, because we all have these unique things and unique ways we want to do it of. And then you can bring in teams of people because they're uniquely like meant
Yeah.
for that kind of space, or whether they're virtual, they're in person, they're this, they're that. Like that's what's so cool about all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it will help you determine some of those income streams with that, because some are going to take, or the way that you provide those income streams, like for instance, our print on demand method and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So here's how those things, when you go through those questions, and let me really quickly repeat the questions for
Yeah,
you. So
definitely.
what does my time look like?
Yeah, being realistic about your time.
What do you want to do with your time?
Mm-hmm.
What does my space look like? Your physical space. And what waste are you okay with?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is, what kind of life do you want to live and what do you want your life to look like?
Yep.
So going through those questions, then like how does that actually determine like what you want to offer in income streams, and how do you say yes and no's to income streams?
Yep.
Basically, you want to think, like we said, think about your long-term goals for your business, and they can change sometimes and that's okay. But long-term, where are you going? And then how you set, sometimes you have to dabble in an income stream
Yeah, that's
to
true.
see if it's right for you. So sometimes you've got to test it out to see like, actually, I don't think this is the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or this
Yeah,
works
I think
really
in a lot of ways
well.
you just got to go some of that. You have to go through the process of pushing into that and then realizing, okay, maybe this isn't the right fit.
And some income
that's
streams
okay.
take time to know. So
True.
licensing, we've done different things and stuff like that. And some of it, because you won't know until the next quarter whether you've made
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, that's
And so that you can't, again, I think licensing is a great example. I was listening to something recently of somebody that they're way more experienced in this than us, and they've done a ton of licensing and stuff. And she's like, it's a amazing, great base, but it can't be your only thing, because you have very little control over what the income
Yeah,
is and stuff
that's
like that, and it can fluctuate so much. So that is a great example of like some things take space, but like
Right.
in time to know. But dabble in things, test them out, see what you think, like see what your audience needs and wants too.
Yeah,
I think that's super
That's
important.
really, really important.
We started doing podcasts and doing a course and stuff because that was some of the needs we were seeing from you guys, from our audience, of questions we get and the problems you were struggling with and stuff. We were like, oh, well, like we're still a few steps ahead. Like we could provide some really good input and stuff like that and help you guys in your creative businesses.
Yeah.
So it's taking those income stream ideas, testing them out, ask other people who have done them. There are so many, like I said, there's somebody I've been really following and learning from and listening to that has a lot of experience with licensing and royalties and stuff, because that, while we've done licensing, royalties is new to us and that kind of thing. And it's just kind of like, well, we need to educate ourselves on it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, because we're getting those coming at us now.
Exactly.
So yeah, for sure.
So again, it is just taking a look at the different income stream options you have.
Yep.
You cannot all do them at once. It just
Yeah, that's a great point. I think just
Is impossible.
knowing that you take a shot at one or two.
And
at the
see
most
if you
and
can
see what's going
do,
on.
for instance, here's a great example. You could be working, see if there's something that can be tandem that easily fits together. Because so a great example is, if you are making products, can that design be presented to somebody for licensing? Can that design be, and then you have to work out whether you can sell it still and stuff like that. But
Well, if it's picked up.
Exactly, if it's picked up. Can, we participate in the Minted community, and they have competitions and challenges that we will come up with designs or artwork for and that kind of stuff. Now, the majority of ours clearly have not won. We've had some winners recently, which we were celebrating, but then we have those designs. It's not like you've done that work for nothing. We can then take those designs and sell them. If they've won, it's strictly and exclusive to Minted. But we can test some things out there, or there are other places that you can still personally sell it, or you can sell it in multiple places. Like we do some stuff with some card companies that several card companies have the same design that they sell because they don't have an exclusivity clause. And so there are ways that you can make it work and mesh together where you're not doubling your work, that you can do. You're not having to
create things for specific areas. Sometimes that might happen.
For sure.
But maybe at the beginning you create a couple things and then, try to push them into the different income streams and see what happens with either one. If you've got to take something down because it's gotten picked up and licensed, and it works out for you, that's amazing. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's just the important thing to look at is you have lots of different options for your income streams. I think this year with COVID and everything has taught so many people so much of we completely believe that it's important to understand your uniqueness and offering those things, and you can't be doing 4,000 things at once, but also diversifying your income streams in a creative business, because there's lots of options that are kind of quote unquote easy wins. They take work, but they're easy to try and see how that goes with those things. And so don't be scared of them. I know some of them, especially licensing or wholesale and stuff like that, those scary. All feel so big and overwhelming, and I have to make a wholesale catalog then, and all these kinds of things. Google it. It's out there, and there are people that are offering good quality content to help you get started, or good quality content that you may have to pay for, but it's totally worth it.
Yes.
Because it will get you to that next level. And that's totally, we have invested in our business to learn about these income streams. To learn about how to do them well, to be able to not just be throwing things and hoping something sticks.
Right.
You've got to, follow people that you've seen be successful in some of those things, and then understand and learn from them in ways that you may have to actually, which you should pay for their information, knowledge to help you and that kind of thing. So,
definitely. But
don't do that until you have looked at your time and gone through those questions. And what you want things to look like, because it's not worth spending the money if then you're
right. Oh, now I have to go back and do all that.
Actually, this isn't what I want for my business, or that kind of thing. So that's something to think about with it, and how you structure things and that kind of thing. And this helps. It's just so immense in understanding what you want things to look like. Again, it's all about seeing your path and knowing your priorities and that kind of thing too, that help you determine, how do I make money in my business?
Yep.
So I hope this has been helpful. We will have a link to a couple of the things that I mentioned, like how to track your time and stuff like that, resources and that kind of thing for sure, in the episode notes. But we'd love, as always, to hear from you guys. Let us know what things you have found helpful in determining income streams of your business, or also, is there one we didn't list that you have found really you're having fun with getting into, and that kind of thing too, of different ways to help grow your creative business.
Hearing your guys' experiences with it and dabbling in it is always good to bounce back and forth.
Exactly. So. Well, we've loved spending time with you, and we will talk to you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.